أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين أما بعد فقد قال الله تعالى في محكم كتابه الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وقال ربكم ادعوني أستجب لكم إن الذين يستكبرون عن عبادتي سيدخلون الجهنم داخرين آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. Your second salawat for love of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And your loudest salawat for ta'jeel faraj sahib al-asr wa zaman. Assalamu alaikum. Now, I will be paying attention to who falls asleep because the lights are out. I can see you even if you can't see me. I know who's falling asleep. So no falling asleep today, okay? Thursday nights is a great time to have two discussions. The first discussion that we have is around fiqh and Islamic law. And then the second that we have is around the topic or a discussion for that night that's preferred. Our discussions around fiqh will only last between 5 to 7 minutes. And this week and next week, before we start the month of Ramadan, I want to kind of explain why this is an important topic and discussion to have. Many times when we think about the ibadat of Allah and the commands of Allah, we think about that Allah wants me to love Him, so therefore I love Him. Then why is it so important that I pay attention to the specificity, the details, and why is there so much specification and detail? There's two ways of looking at this. One, intellectually, we have a desire to love order and structure. And that in everything that we do, the better the quality is, the better the structure is. And when we violate that structure, we say it's not a good thing. I'll give you an example. Let's look at a professional sports game. Let's look at basketball, because football's over, right? Let's look at basketball. In the game of basketball, a basket is worth 2 points, and there's a certain delimited point beyond which it's worth 3 points. I do something in the 3-point range, I have to have 3. I do something inside the 2-point range, I get 2 and no less than 2. It's a game. It's for fun. It's just for fun. Let's say the period ends and I make a basket. Do I get points for it? No. That is a demonstration of showing that man likes order, likes structure. Society likes structure and likes to have order in the actions that they perform. And when it's done correctly, it's valuable. And when it's done incorrectly, it's not worth anything. If the nature of man is such to appreciate order and structure, then we have to understand that when it comes to the Khaliq and the Creator, that He is the creator of order and structure, therefore the way that we approach Him requires order and structure, and we have to follow the designations exactly the way Allah wants. And when we follow those designations exactly the way Allah wants, then it is an action worthy of reward. And if we don't follow those designations, then why should we get a reward? If in a game I can understand that I shouldn't get points when I don't follow the rules, why should it be that Allah accepts my ibadah when I don't follow His instruction? The other approach to understanding why this fiqh and Islamic law is so important is to understand who it originates from. Nothing in Islamic law today, when we talk about fiqh, there is nothing that is interpreted or added by humanity. All of the Islamic law that we have is derived from Quran, Hadith. There are 4 total sources: Al-Aql, Al-Ijma', Quran and Hadith. The fundamental 2 are Quran and Hadith. That for something to be wajib or something to be haram, Allah has to be the one who commands it in Quran, or that His divine representative gives us a statement or an action that shows that this action is haram or that this action is wajib. Once we go beyond that, then comes to the point of aql and the intellect that submits to certain actions needing to be wajib. And the example of that is given in consideration of, for example, wudu. Wudu within itself is not wajib. But Allah made salat wajib. He made prayers wajib. And therefore, if prayers are wajib, and he says you can't come to prayers without taharat, wudu then became wajib on the basis of intellect, that if I have to pray, then at certain points in time, even wudu as a condition of taharat can become wajib upon me. So this is where the intellect became a source of us being able to derive something that's mandatory for us to perform. Finally, the fourth of these sources of Islamic law is called ijma'. Ijma' is where there's a collective of the ulama who came together and all made the same statement, though we may not understand why they made this statement. The significance of this points back to how information was passed to us in history. You see, everybody's okay, right? I'm going to do a little bit of history here. We're okay? We're stopping law and talking about history for a second. Good? Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammad. You see, in history, books were written by hand. And those books were passed down from generation to generation to generation. And the consequence of that was wherever the book was is where knowledge was researched and studied. However, about 1,000 years ago, when Sheikh Tusi was the head of the Hawza, he was in possession of a library of collection of books that numbered over 80,000 books. And at that point in time, the head of the Hawza was in the city of Baghdad. In Baghdad, there was a lot of strife because it was the capital, and the capital, again, following the four other schools of thought and seeing the head of the Shia school of thought in the same location, there was a lot of conflict and strife. And during the life of Sheikh Tusi, they burned his library. The entire history of Islam that we possessed was lost. The consequence of that losing of 80,000 books, and Sheikh Tusi, who moved the Hawza from Baghdad to Najaf, spent the rest of his life recreating all of that knowledge that we lost as much as he could. But the consequence of that loss of knowledge was that at times we can reference and say that all of the ulama said this, but we don't have the intellectual inheritance to know why did they say this. So what happened was ijma' then became a rule that if all of the ulama of a time made a statement together and nobody differed in it, that must mean that there was a source that we at one point in time had that we may have lost now. That means that there was some reason that they all agreed upon this, and even if I can't understand the source, I can accept the opinion of the ulama. These are the four sources of where law comes from and where Islamic law is structured from. One of the important reasons of why we have to follow these laws and we can't do what we want to and express our love for Allah in any which way that we want is because when I worship the way I want to, I'm not worshiping Allah, I'm worshiping myself. Let me explain what I mean by that statement because it's a pretty significant statement. Me saying that it's sufficient for me to express my love to Allah when I want and how I want, and it's more about how I feel, puts me first and Allah second. I'm not giving Allah what He asked for, I'm giving Allah what I desire to give Him. Meaning my priority is me, my desire. My interest, my values, my opinions come first, Allah comes second. But when ibadat is done following the ahkam and the rules that Allah has prescribed, I say, I may not like it, I may not understand it, but this is what the one who I loved asked for, this is what my Creator asked for. I prefer what He says over what I understand and what I desire. Therefore, this subject of Islamic law is significant to pay attention to from the aspect of making sure that our actions are desired and complete in the eyes of Allah, and two, as a demonstration that Allah is my priority, not myself. If I have discretion and choice to worship Allah any which way I want to, I'm not really worshiping Allah. I'm just doing what I feel like. And the entire purpose of creation is the submission to Allah. Inshallah, we'll continue this discussion around fiqh every week, a little bit of an elaboration. But this is kind of like a preliminary, an introduction to the concept and discussion of why it's important to pay attention. Because some of these laws, they get very specific. Shall I give you an example? All right. Tonight, when you came in, is Salwaat-e-Shabaniyah. Let's say I didn't pray Maghrib. Everybody's praying Isha. And I haven't prayed Maghrib yet. Can I pray Isha? Nope. I have to pray Maghrib first, because that's what Allah asked me for. I can't, just because it's convenient for me, choose to go Isha first, everybody's praying, I'll pray Maghrib afterwards. It doesn't work that way. Allah has asked for actions in a particular format, I have to give them in that format. So which is why paying attention to these rules. So what do we do in this situation? Let's say I come in and I have to pray Maghrib, everybody's praying Isha. But it's like, it's awkward to join and break. No, we have to. So what do? You pray 3 rakat with everybody. At the 3rd rakat, when the Imam stands up, you recite Tashahhud and Salam. You can still join and get credit as if you recited both of those prayers in Jama'ah. But what I have to do, yes, a 2 for 1 deal. I have to stand up as soon as I finish my Salam, I stand up and I join the Imam as he's in the 4th rakat. And now I have 2 things happen. When I stand up in the 4th rakat, it's my 1st rakat, it's the Imam's 4th rakat. If I join him in Qiyam and I say Allahu Akbar while he's in Qiyam, I have the wujub of reciting at least Surah Fatiha or both of the surahs because it's my 1st rakat. And the Imam is reciting his 4th rakat. So he's not covering for me. But what I do is I don't recite Allahu Akbar until he comes to ruku in the 4th rakat. When he comes to ruku in the 4th rakat and I join him, it's my 1st rakat, but I'm joining in ruku, I have the obligation to join from ruku. I don't have the obligation to recite the surahs anymore. So I join in ruku and I immediately go, as soon as he goes to ruku, I go Allahu Akbar and I join in ruku, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim wa bihamdi, I continue. Now again, when the prayer ends, because he's in his 4th, I'm in my 1st. So when he starts, Ashhadu an la, do I have a tashahhud at that time? No, I don't. So I can do 2 things. One, I can either break in that instance immediately. He starts tashahhud, I get up and I start my next rakat. But if I want the thawab of the tashahhud and the salam, it's possible. But you see, the thing is, if I sit there and I listen, it's as if I'm reciting tashahhud. And there's no tashahhud in that rakat. I added something to prayers, my prayers are void. I didn't do it the way Allah wanted to. So what you do is you start the process of standing up. You get your knees off of the ground as if you're standing up, and then you participate in the tashahhud and even the salam until the final salam I can participate in, and then stand up as that final salam begins. Because the final salam is what ends the prayer. And me standing up before that, I get all of the thawab of joining until that exact last second. So learning these rules and paying attention to them is very practical, that we maximize the benefit and we ensure that our actions are what Allah desires. And inshallah we'll continue this discussion. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In Surah Al-Ghafir, verse number 40, Allah makes a very interesting statement where He says, and the entire Quran is interesting, قَالَ رَبُّكُمْ أَدْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Allah says in the Quran, He says, your Lord has said to you, call on me, أَدْعُونِي أَسْتَجِبْ لَكُمْ. Call on me, I will answer you. This statement of Allah is a really powerful statement, because essentially Allah has made the promise and the commitment that if you call me, you will definitely get answered. That your dua is answered. Has to be answered because Allah has made a promise. But there are etiquettes and processes of asking Allah, and there are times and places of asking Allah that do a few things for us. One, it makes sure that we are making our dua correctly. We are doing it so that it's answered quickly, and we're doing it in a way that honors the dignity of the one that we're asking. But to call to Allah is mustahab in every situation. There's a hadith that even talks about that our Prophet, Nabi Musa, who goes and he says, oh Allah, astahyi an adhkurakum wa aruh ila al-bayt al-khala. I am embarrassed, Allah, that I should remember you when I go to the washroom. Whatever happens in there is besides the point. But he says, oh Allah, I want to remember you always, but that place I don't want to remember you. And Allah replies to Nabi Musa and He says, remember me everywhere but appropriately. And even there's nothing wrong with remembering Allah but appropriately. That there are ways of doing these actions as well too. The significance of this is to point out that remembering Allah is something that we should be doing, and when we call on Him the way Allah desires, we accomplish something special and we accomplish our needs through the discussion with Him. Remembering the statement, Ad'uni astajib lakum from Allah, call on me, I will answer you, is a very powerful proof that when I have doubt that my prayer is answered, did I speak to Allah in the correct fashion? Did I use the correct tone? Then I should be certain that Allah has heard me and will answer me. Which is why this month in particular, the month of Sha'ban, is a month of dua, is a month of supplication. And there are a few unique things here that if someone doesn't teach you, you may not realize the value of them. So meaning the way that, for example, right, I feel sick. I feel sick. I know of Tylenol, I know of Advil, I know of Motrin, and if things get really bad, I take a leave. These are the things I know. But what happens when I'm really sick? Sometimes I go to a specialist, a doctor, a physician, who comes and tells me that no, if you're having pain over here, don't take these medicines, take this medicine and it will help you. The same way when it comes to dua and me wanting Allah to answer me. There are times when I know what to turn to, Dua-e-Kumayl. I know what to turn to Salwaat-e-Shabaniyah. But then there are other times that there are certain things that I don't know unless if someone teaches me that this is beneficial and it serves a benefit. That's where there are two things in this month which are very important, and we may be missing them. And the whole point is to point some of these things out. The first that we'll mention is called Salwaat-e-Shabaniyah, are the salawat on our Prophet for the month of Sha'ban. This salawat is special for this month, and it's something that our fourth Imam used to recite, and the other A'imma also used to recite. And it's a special way of sending blessings upon the Holy Prophet specifically for this month. And there's even a time that it's specified when they should be performed. That this salawat is something to be recited in the zawal. Zawal refers to the moment when the sun reaches its peak and starts now to decline. So exactly at the time of Zohar, because Zohar is exactly the time where the sun now starts its decline, that's the exact time that this action is prescribed for. And the message in this salawat that's recommended is very particular and very specific and very beneficial. It's something that originates and shows the relationship I possess with the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt, what I rely on them for, and how I use them to turn back to Allah. To show, there are two short passages that we'll share. First off, we see that this is narrated in many books of ahadith. We see Iqbal al-A'mal, al-Balad al-Amin, al-Misbah, Misbah al-Mutahajjad, Jamal al-Usbu'i, Wasa'il al-Shia, Bihar al-Anwar, all narrate that there is something special called Salwaat-e-Shabaniyah. And the famous narration that comes from it is that our fourth Imam used to recite this dua, this salawat, every day at the time of Zawal in the month of Sha'ban, and especially on the night of the 15th of Sha'ban. Now that's past, but it's still important to know this. One of the passages in here, we recite and we say, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, al-fulk al-jariyati fi lujaj al-ghamira, ya'amunu man raqibaha wa yaghruku man tarakaha. We say in this salawat, in this dhikr of the Ahlul Bayt, oh Allah, send blessings on Prophet Muhammad and his household. They are the sailing ships through the abysmal waves. And he who embarks on their ships will be saved, and he who abandons them will be drowned. One of the descriptions the Ahlul Bayt would make of themselves is that they would say, Nahnu safinatan najat. That we are the arks of salvation. That we are the ones who, if you join us, you will be protected from the difficulties that come ahead and the punishment of Allah. Amongst all of them, there is a statement that our Prophet taught us about Imam Hussain alayhi salam. Inna al-Hussayn misbah al-huda was-safinatu najat. That certainly Hussain is the lamp of guidance and the ark of salvation. And it was said that this was written in the heavens and the Prophet taught it to us. When our sixth Imam repeated this statement, and he made this statement as well too, and he said that certainly Hussain is the ark of salvation. One of the companions sitting there turns to him and he said, Awalaysa kullukum safinatun najat? Are not all of you arks of salvation? Don't all of you guide us to the same path that you're telling us that Imam Hussain is the ark of salvation? Imam Sadiq replies, yes, we all are. But the ark of Hussain is wider and faster than all of us. The significance of this statement points to the idea that we need the example of all of the Imams to guide us, but the easiest one to connect with is that message of Imam Hussain and his great sacrifice. That it's quicker and easier to build that connection and turn back to Allah through that example of that great sacrifice than it may be for others to connect through these examples. But each of them is a source of guidance, and this is why we say, يَأْمُنُ مَنْ رَكِبَهَا. Saved is the one who embarks upon these paths. وَيَغْرُقُ مَنْ تَرَكَهَا. And the one who stays away from them is certainly drowned in loss. The dua, the salawat continues, it says, الْمُتَقَدِّمَ لَهُ مَارِقٌ وَالْمُتَأَخِّرُ عَنْهُمْ زَاهِقٌ وَاللَّازِمُ لَهُمْ لَاهِقٌ. This is a really important and interesting statement, where they say, he who precedes them will miss the right path, and he who misses them will lose, but he who adheres to them will win. This statement that's added in the Salwaat-e-Shabaniyah is very particular about how it is that we need to connect ourselves to the path of Ahlul Bayt. It specifies and says that one who goes ahead of them will be lost, will miss the right path. And one who misses them, who stays behind or doesn't keep up with them, will lose as well. Only the one who follows them exactly. The significance of this statement is to say that when we follow the Ahlul Bayt, we don't add more to them than what they've given us, nor do we take away anything that they've given us. The example of this is what? That the Imam says, I am the Ark of Salvation. You go forward and you say he is even more than that. The Imam says, perform the action in this way or follow me in this format. I say, no, I don't believe in this. For example, sometimes we hear a hadith of the Ahlul Bayt, or a hadith or saying about the Ahlul Bayt. Say, no, I don't understand it, therefore it can't be true. This is the one who falls behind them, and the one who goes ahead is the one who exaggerates about them. But the exact way that they describe is the way that we want to be connected to them, and this is one of the messages of Salwaat-e-Shabaniyah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In this dua, in this salawat, in this specific passage of the month of Sha'ban, is also another phrase in which we say, هَذَا شَهْرُ نَبِيُّكَ سَيِّدِ الرَّسُولِ. This is that month of your Prophet, the master of all of your messengers. شَعْبَانُ الَّذِي حَفَّفْتُهُ مِنْكَ بِالرَّحْمَةِ وَرِضْوَانِ. And this is Sha'ban in which you have encompassed Allah with your mercy and your pleasure. الَّذِي كَانَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَآلِهِ وَسَلَّمَ يَدْأَبُ فِي صِيَامِهِ وَقِيَامِهِ. And this is that month in which this messenger of yours, peace and blessings be upon him and his household, used to observe fasting through great difficulty and used to spend this month in acts of worship. فِي لِيَالِهِ وَأَيَّامِهِ. In the nights and the days of this month. بُخُوعًا لَكَ فِي إِكْرَامِهِ وَإِعْظَامِهِ. On account of your honoring and dignifying of this month, إِلَى مَحَلِّ حِمَامِهِ. Until the time of his death, the Prophet treated this month differently. This instruction tells us that this month, when we behave differently in this month, and we should behave differently in this month, is because of this exact reason that the Prophet gave it preference and the Prophet treated it differently and went through difficulties to spend this month in ibadat in front of Allah. Allahumma fa'inna ala al-istinana bisunnatihi fihi wa nail shafa'ati ladayhi. So we say, oh Allah, help us to follow the example of the Prophet. Keep us with the Prophet. Follow his example and be like him in honoring this month. And help us attain his intercession for us on the Day of Judgment. The beauty of this salawat is that it spells out all of the implied meanings that we have when we recite this salawat that we do. The benefit of salawat, in very particular, one of the shortest explanations that says, the one who recites salawat out loud, يَذْهَبُ النِّفَاقُ عَنْ قَلْبِهِ. That hypocrisy leaves the heart of that individual. This, in terms of its most practical benefit of the recitation of the salawat, reciting it out loud, making sure that we're a part of it, the significance is that some things that, for example, the doubts that creep into our hearts because of the world and the environment that we live in, it's a protection for our hearts from those difficulties. And it is one of the most significant, important actions that will protect us on the Day of Judgment from all of the trials and tribulations that befall us. The other significant element, and I want to keep it short, but I want to kind of mention this, because again, if nobody tells you, you won't know, is something called Munajat-e-Shabaniyah. Munajat-e-Shabaniyah is something unique, because at the very least, all 12 Imams used to recite it, if not all 14 of the Ma'sumin. Some authors have specified and said each Imam recited it. Some have gone so far that its introduction to us was from Rasulullah, and we are certain that every single one of the 14 of the Ma'sumin would recite this supplication. This supplication of Sha'ban is something that every Ma'sum recited, and it's something really special. One of the important things to notice is, what's the difference between a munajat and a dua? I'm not asking, I'll tell you. I mean, do you guys want me to ask you? No, I'll tell you. I mean, never mind. A munajat is a type of dua. So all munajats are duas, but not all duas are munajat. To explain. A dua is something that is a request or a supplication. A munajat is a private whispered conversation. The tone of a dua is formal, is asking, is submitting a requisition form before the eyes of Allah. The tone of a munajat is an emotional, deep connection with the Creator. The purpose of a dua is to seek help and blessings and forgiveness from Allah directly. The purpose of a munajat is an expression of love and devotion and humility and sincerity in front of Allah. The language is very structured in a dua, and the language in a munajat is very personal and poetic. An example of a dua is, Oh Allah, arzuqni bil hayat al-tayyiba. Oh Allah, give me a good life. Or as we recite from the Quran, Rabbana a'tina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirati hasanatan wa qina adhaban. A munajat, on the other hand, is the whispering to Allah in love and in private communication between just me and Him. Now there are some famous munajats. For example, there is the munajat of Amir al-Mu'mineen that's typically recited in the month of Ramadan, around the days of his shahada, or it's also known as the munajat of Amir al-Mu'mineen Masjid-e-Kufa, because that's where it was narrated that we would hear Imam Ali calling out to Allah like this, Mawlaya ya Mawlaya, Anta al-Khaliq wa ana al-Makhluq, Hal yarham al-Makhluq illa al-Khaliq. We recite this, and we recite the beauty of this is amazing. But sometimes what we do is we recite it as, for example, a discussion, a discourse, all of us together. But the reality of that munajat is that this is when I want to have a private conversation with Allah, I want to speak to Him intimately, is why Imam Ali gave us this. Munajat-e-Shabaniyah is famous for a number of reasons. One is the fact that this was something that all of the Imams would recite. Two, in it is some of the proofs of the clarity that this is not a man-made communication. It's not possible for any human being to come up with this language. Ayatollah Khomeini rahmatullah alayhi used to say that this is the perfect dua for preparing for the month of Ramadan. It's noted that many of his lectures, he would begin with words and passages from Munajat-e-Shabaniyah. And in his prayers, when he would recite Qunut, he would also recite passages of Munajat-e-Shabaniyah. When he was asked amongst his favorite du'as, he specified this dua as well too, and said that this is one of the most important spiritual elements that you can pick up on about your conversation and relationship with Allah. For us, as we want to grow and we want to take advantage of this time period, one of the things not to separate from is this munajat. Some of the statements that are made in this munajat, in this personal discussion, if you pay attention to them, we say, Ilahi in haramtani, faman dhalladhi yarzuqni. We say, Ilahi, oh my Lord, oh my dear Lord, if you deprive me, then who else can provide for me with sustenance? وَإِنْ خَذَلْتَنِي فَمَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَنْصُرَنِي. And oh Allah, if you forsake me, then who else will help me? إِلَهِي أَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنْ غَضَبِكَ وَحُلُولِ سَخَطِكَ. Oh my Lord, I seek your protection against your wrath and earning your displeasure. Notice the beauty of the language that I'm talking to Allah exactly, and I'm saying, oh Allah, it's your displeasure I'm worried about. إِلَهِي إِن كُنْتُ غَيْرَ مُسْتَحْلِهِ لِرَحْمَتِكَ فَأَنْتَ أَهْلُ أَن تَجُودَ عَلَيَّ بِفَضْلِ سَعَتِكَ. Oh my Lord, if I'm not deserving of your mercy, you are certainly fit to be generous to me by virtue of your magnanimity, your mercy. This communication, look at the structure of it. It's me personally speaking with Allah. It's not us speaking to Allah. It's me talking to Allah. إلهي كأني بنفسي واقفة بين يديك وقد أظلها حسن توكلي عليك. Oh my Lord, it's like I see myself standing before you, and it is that I have been shaded by the goodness of my trust in you, that I am counting on you, O Allah. The importance of all of these points is what? That I am in need of connecting my relationship with Allah and communicating with Him before I lose that ability. Let me explain. In this life, as long as we're alive, I can explain myself, I can have a conversation, I can change, I can excuse myself. As soon as I die, I lose that ability. I no longer have the freedom of communication. Now I'm subject to orders and structure and responsibility. To the extent where, when we stand before Allah on the Day of Judgment, He doesn't ask us. He asks our skin. He asks our eyes. He asks our lips. But He doesn't ask me. To the extent where Allah describes a conversation that happens between man and his body on that day. Where Allah in the Quran says, لِمَا شَهِدْتُمْ عَلَيْنَا. Why did you bear witness against me, O my body? Allah is saying, you will say, because you won't have the freedom to speak to Allah the way you want to, Allah will direct that communication how He wants to. لِمَاذَا شَهِدْتُمْ عَلَيْنَا. Why did you bear witness against us? And your body will reply and say, أَنْتَقَنِي اللَّهُ أَنْتَقَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ. Allah made me speak against you, and He is the one who makes everything speak. The significance of all this is that today, I can ask for an excuse. I can have a conversation. But there will come a time when I will lose this ability, and now is that time for me to take this advantage and speak to Him. Which is why it says, إِلَهِي لَمْ يَزَلْ بِرُّكَ عَلَيَّ أَيَّامَ حَيَاتِي فَلَا تَقْتَعَ بِرَّكَ عَنِّي فِي مَمَاتِي. My Lord, you have never ceased your favors on me in my lifetime. So do not cease your goodness towards me at the time of death. إلهي كيف آيس من حسن نظرك لي بعد مماتي. My Lord, how can I despair of your benevolent attention towards me after my death? وأنت لم تولني إلا الجميل في حياتي. While you have been nothing but good to me throughout my life. إلهي تولى من أمري ما أنت أهله وعد علي بفضلك على مذنبي قد غمره جهله. My Lord, magnify my affairs in the very way that befits you and the way you want to see me. And confer upon me, a sinful person who is covered in his ignorance, with your favors. This is the desire each of us will possess, to be able to talk to Allah like this after we die and we can see all the mistakes that we made. But then Allah won't listen to us. But now is that time, and this is that time. Munajat-e-Shabaniyah is something to recite in the nights and in the privacy of communication with Allah, where we're individually present. And to appreciate that Allah has given us this opportunity now, before it is that we leave this earth, and then we are subject to His authority. إلهي لم أسلط علي حسن ظني قنوت أياسي ولا أنقطع رجائي من جميل كرمك. My Lord, do not let the dejection of despair overshadow my beautiful opinion, and do not cut my hope from your generosity. Every one of us holds this in our hearts, and this munajat helps us express it. That today, before this life ends, I have the opportunity to have this discussion and to ask for this need. Let me ask now, so that when I don't have the ability to communicate with you, that you give me this benefit from now at that time. This is why these nights are important for us to remember and to take this opportunity and to learn these new things. And that those who left before us, remember them in these. That if they've lost the opportunity to have this dua, then we who remain recite this dua on our behalf and on their behalf. The beauty of every good deed that you can do, every mustahab action you can do, you can include every person you can think of and every one of your marhumeen with you in all of those affairs. The beauty of a good deed that you do for the sake of Allah, it's spreading to every person, is like the light of a candle. Does lighting one candle to another decrease anything from the first? No. Same as the thawab of these actions, that remember all of your marhumeen in these nights, and they get the benefit, the same as the benefit you get for yourself. You don't lose anything by giving to another, but rather you increase in the barakat of these events. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. On our discussion with the dua, ندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم. 10 times we call out, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Ya Mahmud بحق محمد يا أعلى بحق علي يا فاطر السماوات بحق فاطمة يا محسن بحق الحسن يا قديم الإحسان بحق الحسين. Oh Allah, accept this small ibadat from us. Ya Allah, give the thawab of this majlis to the marhameen of tonight's sponsors, our marhameen, all those who are in need of dua. Oh Allah, we ask by the right of this majlis that we have come here with hajat, fulfill our hajat. Ya Allah, those amongst our families, our communities, the mu'mineen who are suffering from sickness and disease, give shafa'ah to the mu'mineen wherever they may be. Oh Allah, keep our children on the upright path of Islam. Oh Allah, give us tawfiq that our ibadat are accepted, our amal are accepted, and our lineage continues on these good actions. Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman. Make us and our families from the upright supporters of Sahib al-Zaman. Intend us that the ziyarat of Imam Hussain in this world and the shafa of Imam Hussain in the hereafter. We complete again by reciting one Surah Fatiha, 3 times Surah Ikhlas for all of our marhameen, khususan those of tonight's sponsors, Sayyid Sibti Hassan Rizvi, Jafri Rizvi, Muhammad Abbas, Tahir Abegam, Ali Awsa, and also marhum Musa Bazi as well too. Surah Fatiha or 3 times Surah Ikhlas, and your loudest of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala